Hello Year 9 and welcome to your second session on choices and pathways. You've had half term since we did our last session together, so I'd like you to have a think now and write down 2 things that you found out with regards to your progression route. That might be something you found out independently, something you found out from researching on Unifrog and looking in the careers library there, or perhaps an email conversation that you've had with Miss McGowan or looking at the Bishop Challoner Careers Hub. If you could write those 2 things down now before moving on to the next slide. Thank you, Year 9. We will move on now. Our focus for today's session isn't just looking at where you might find information or do some research like the last session was, but we're actually going to be looking at the changes to the modern industry since the global pandemic. So it's really relevant to the moment that we're in now. You'll be looking at what type of skills you might need in the future and how this might link to your pathway choices. So we're going to have a think about some considerations for the future of work and relate that back to how this might affect the choices that you make at Key Stage 3 going into Key Stage 4. 2020 to 2030 is set to be a decade of rapid change. The labour market and the world of work will be affected by 3 main factors over the next 10 years. COVID-19 has had a huge impact. Automation, and what that means is the creation and the use of technologies to produce and deliver goods or services without human intervention. So the use of machinery to do things that perhaps humans once did. And the environmental crisis that we find ourselves in. We're going to explore these on the next slides. So we're going to think about COVID-19 and the reality. COVID-19 changed our way of working overnight and maybe forever. Every sector has been affected by COVID-19, but some worse than others. For example, hospitality, pubs, restaurants, clubs, cafes, culture, theatre shows can't go on, aviation and manufacturing. We have a greater reliance now on technology, and we know that at the moment from the remote learning we're doing and the reliance that we have on good, fast internet and on devices that we can learn from. More people are working from home, and more people are working in the gig economy. And by that, we mean people working in temporary contracts, and they're hired for short temporary positions. The pandemic is speeding up our move towards automation, which we've already discussed, and digitisation. Particularly industries such as wholesale, retail and manufacturing. And what we mean by that is converting information from something into a digital form. So COVID-19 has provided us with some opportunities. We've all recognised and appreciated key worker heroes, the medical professionals and everyone working in the NHS, those people who have worked tirelessly in supermarkets making sure that we've got food, lorry drivers who are transporting all those key things that we need, cleaners, school staff, the armed forces, bus drivers have kept the UK going during this global pandemic. There has also been more demand in other key areas such as biomedical science and microbiology, garment technology, freight forwarding, clinical engineering. I'd like you to take a little bit of time now to create a mind map. And in that mind map, I want you to outline the areas of opportunity that have become more prevalent since COVID-19. So the idea is to write down anything there where you think more opportunities have become available in certain jobs. I'm going to give you about 3 minutes to do that now before moving on to the next slide. So some thoughts now on automation and the reality. We are in the fourth industrial revolution, which means an increase in automation, artificial intelligence and robotics. A number of jobs will be replaced by machines during this next decade. So 22% of workforce activities in Europe will be automated by 2030. Things like basic data input and processing jobs will fall by 15%. Physical and manual skilled jobs will also fall by 14%. A task for you to do. I'd like you to make 2 predictions by researching on the internet of 2 jobs that will be replaced by a machine in the next decade. So you're really thinking here about how automation is going to work over the next 10 years between 2020 and 2030 by trying to find a job that will be replaced by a machine. And once you've found those out, just jot them down in your notes. So now we're going to think about automation and the opportunities that might be available. Whilst machines may take over methodical tasks, there will be a higher demand for more jobs that computers can't do, such as IT professionals and programmers, technology designers, engineers, advanced technology maintenance workers, scientific researchers, mental health counsellor, astrochemist, artificial intelligence training, sports nutritionist, urban planner, psychiatrist, welfare rights officer, or a nurse. I'd like you to come back to this task at the end of the presentation and create a table that lists all of these jobs, and then find a description for what each one is, because perhaps it's something that you would like to pursue in the future. We'll move on to the next slide now. Alongside everything else we've talked about today, we can't forget the environmental crisis and the reality of that. We have 2 major problems. Climate breakdown. This is where climate change has become dangerous because of warming up of the atmosphere. And biodiversity crisis, which is the loss of huge numbers of plants and animals due to humanity's impact on the planet. In order to avoid catastrophic climate breakdown, the world must completely decarbonise by 2050. We're going to talk about that on the next slide. So, bearing in mind everything we've talked about in terms of the environmental crisis, there are opportunities that will arise from this. With urgent action, this crisis presents a massive opportunity for future employment. Here are a few of the many in-demand jobs over the next decade. Green building designer, somebody who designs buildings which absorb carbon and heat and encourage biodiversity. Sustainability consultant, helping organisations build sustainability into the way that they work. Wind energy engineer, designing new, more efficient ways of generating power from wind turbines. And solar farm managers. Again, after this presentation is finished, I'd like you to come back to this slide and find out a little more what each of these jobs is and what skills would be required, and you can present your findings as a mind map. Some thoughts now for your own progression. The unexpected can happen. Careers change quickly, so we need to be adaptable and resilient. Having transferable skills is essential to succeed in the future labour market. And here are some of the skills that will be in demand over the next 10 years. Skills in technology, cognitive skills, social and emotional skills, creativity, critical thinking, decision making, initiative taking, scientific research and development, perhaps being an entrepreneur. We don't have all the answers about the next 10 years or indeed the next 10 months, but despite the uncertainty, lots remains the same. The need for skills, the need for qualifications, and the need for experience. You still have a wide range of choice to suit your personality, skill set and interests, so now is the time to really get thinking and start thinking how the future can be affected by the choices that you make today. The last few bits to our session today are just some key reminders from the last time. Some key features of the Year 9 pathways. You will all have your own particular guided pathway, okay? And that will be in red, blue or green. Remember that the guided pathway that you follow will be determined by the academic progress that you've made during Key Stage 3. So as such, it's possible that your guided pathway may change between now and the end of this academic year. The information you can see in front of you now has been shared before by myself and by Mr. Heatherton, and it's just telling you which guided pathway follows which criteria. You will receive, if you haven't done so already, your individual pathway form to complete, and it will show you the choices that you have available. And there's the range of options again, just in case you need a reminder. Some final thoughts and tips then, and these again are relative to what we did in the last session. When you've received your pathway form and guidance, spend some time reading it through and make sure you understand it. If you haven't done so already, go and have a look at Unifrog or speak to Miss Darby, and her email address is there for you. Or Miss McGowan for any careers advice. Think about the option areas that you are generally interested in, and think about today, and think about some of the things we've discussed and how that might affect your choices. Please look back through this presentation in your own time and think which subjects offer the skills you would like to acquire, and do some of the tasks about research that I've indicated throughout. Thank you for listening, Year 9.